welcome to this episode of our Friday special transmission. Today we're talking about the all-important peace in Afghanistan. Unfortunately, the peace seems a distant dream because the Russians had planned to have a conversation with the Taliban, which was unfortunately postponed. We'll be talking about that in detail. Let me introduce my guests in the studio. Joining me for the conversation today, first of all, we have Brigadier Salim Qamar Butt Saab with us. Joining him, we have Hassan Khan Saab, and with him we have Abdul Basit. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being here. Sir, I'll start with you. A very unfortunate piece of news coming in because it had garnered a lot of hopes that the Russians had taken the initiative to start a peace process, and the Afghan Taliban had also agreed to join that process. But the Afghan government backed out, and the Americans were also not too keen on this. Why do you think that was the case?
Thank you, Waqas. I think before I answer the why part, let me recollect. In 2017, April, the similar thing happened when Russia had arranged a peace conference in Moscow. They had invited 10 countries there, including 5 Central Asian republics and Pakistan, China, Iran, India, all there. And again, America backed out. And this time the same phenomena is there. So to me, there are 3 main reasons. Number 1 reason is that the main reason, that is the constant reason, that America does not want Russia to regain any influence in Afghanistan peace process. Number 2, the recent surge in Taliban insurgency, which has put the Afghan government on back foot. They're under a lot of criticism. And as you are aware, in the last week, President Ashraf Ghani had to sack his whole security establishment, including the National Security Advisor Hanif Atmar, who is replaced by Afghan ambassador in US, Mohib, who is just 35 years old, and that is an indication who's calling the shot there. Secondly, he also announced sacking his defense minister, the interior minister, and the intelligence chief, Stanekzai, Masoom Stanekzai, which has been taken back, but National Security Advisor is gone home. They had been inflicted a lot of casualties by Taliban recently. They attacked the presidential palace. Ghazni went into the hand of the Taliban for a short period. So these are the 2 main reasons. Third reason is there are a lot of exchange of allegations between USSR, Tajikistan and Afghanistan in Takhar, recent killing of some Afghan Taliban, what the Tajik are calling them smugglers or some drug cartels across the border by a MiG aircraft. Russia is not accepting that allegation. They call it a stage-managed allegation. Tajiks say that they have been killed in a ground action by their troops on ground and in a no man's land. But Afghanistan says that this was cross-border activity by Tajik and Russian Federation. And as a counter-allegation, you remember for the last 1 year, there have been a lot of allegations from President Putin, as well as by Hamid Karzai, that there are a number of unidentified helicopters who are providing all logistics to the Islamic State that is deployed all along Afghanistan Central Asian borders and also along Pakistan-Afghanistan borders. So these allegations are there and the counter allegations are there. So in brief, these are the 3 main reasons. 2 are very current one, and one is a constant one, and we can expand it and discuss it further.
Absolutely. Khan Sahib, one silver lining though is that the talks that were proposed by the Russians have not been completely called off. They've only been postponed, and other countries such as India, such as Iran, such as China, and they have also shown the willingness to engage in that process and not completely call it off. And the Afghan government has also made contact with the Russians. Mr. Ashraf Ghani spoke to Mr. Sergei Lavrov, and that's when they decided to postpone these talks. So the hope for the talks is still there. Do you think that that will continue to be there, or do you think that, like in previous cases, the talks are pretty much dead in the water?
Well, guys, I think Brigadier Saab has rightly pointed to a number of important issues, especially the internal, I think this is called a unity government, so there is no unity, but still is a unity government. The way it is carrying the the whole situation. I was looking at it, the removal of Hanif Atmar, Arab Stanakzai, and bringing a new chair from Washington who was and then accompanying the Zalmay Khalilzad. You know, Zalmay Khalilzad is known to be a pro-war man. So, and this man, Alhamdulillah Moheb, if you go through his tweet, he's a very active person on Twitter, social media. He is also one of those who stick against the militants, as the US policy is. So this Russian proposed, look, before it, there was the SCO approach, a regional approach for resolution of the Afghan crisis, and now the Russians have taken another step, and this is not the first one, it's the second or third one, the Moscow moot. So Americans have been a little, I think, the apprehensive that maybe the Russians are now taking the stage back from them. And this apprehensions that if Russia is involved, Chinese are involved there, if they are engaged there, so definitely the space for, they feel it, that the space for them will be reduced within Afghanistan. So when they announced on 4th of September, this in Moscow moot in Afghanistan, so the first is the US refused to attend it. The US was supposed to be, because it was almost the quadrilateral country group was entirely there, and then coupled by the Central Asian and India, Iran, etc. So the quadrilateral country group plus the others. Yeah. So they were supposed to be there because all those involved in the Afghan peace process, they were called to the meeting. So the Americans refused to attend this conference, and then followed by the Kabul government. They also say that we are not going there, and this was a very flimsy ground on which the Afghan government refused to attend it. The accusation was that Afghan Taliban first announced to accept that they will talk to the Afghan government, only then we will be there. So I think already the Afghan government is very well aware of the position of Taliban, that for the last, I think, almost 2 decades, they say that we will be talking directly to the Americans. We are not talking to the puppet regime. They believe that Ashraf Ghani, or for that matter, President Karzai, the former president, they are the puppet regime, and the actual player is the US. So the Taliban standpoint is that we will be talking directly to the Americans. We are not talking to their. So this was the end, and on this ground. Then the removal of Hanif Atmar. Hanif Atmar, if you go through he is believed to be a pro-Russian guy because he was a member of the Dr. Najib important intelligence team. He was part of that. Later on, he was during the Mujahideen era, and he successfully materialized, bringing Hekmatyar, Gulbuddin Hekmatyar. The truce was made with him, and he was settled in Kabul. And all this, the credit goes to Hanif Atmar and Masoom Stanakzai, which is currently the chief of the NDS, the National Directorate of Security. This goes to both these gentlemen. Both these gentlemen are known to have a pro-Russia approach. So coming up Khalilzad and change of the team, and especially the security team, already Brigadier Sahib has referred to the defense minister, the interior minister. They too have submitted their resignation, but due to the acceptance of resignation of Hanif Atmar, the other three, the NDS chief, the defense and the interior, they were not accepted. And the position that says that the situation is deteriorating day by day, keeping in view the Ghazni situation. So this was a cover-up. What I believe personally, looking into the Afghan scene, is that the situation is being gradually built up for the new team, with the 35 or 36-year-old Moheb, who was ambassador in Washington, and very hard critic of Pakistan, very much anti-Pakistan. And this Zalmay Khalilzad, you know Zalmay Khalilzad, he is the hard critic of Pakistan, is very much against Pakistan. So the new situation, emerging situation in Afghanistan, I think it is not going to be that what we expect, peace toward peace, or bringing normalcy. Personally, I see more war on the Afghan land.
Well, if the stated goal is peace in Afghanistan, Basit, if you could also please share your views on this aspect, that earlier on we had a direct contact between the Taliban and the US government. They did already have a session of talks. Beyond that, we also saw a truce take place. We also heard about maybe another truce coming on the Eid al-Azha. That did not happen, and then the Ghazni attack took place. So where we are right now, we're seeing that the Afghans are following a policy in which they're trying to use their battlefield success to put pressure on the US or the Afghan government for negotiations, but the same tactic is being used by the Americans as well. So we have a deadlock. How can we go beyond this?
If you look at all these developments in last one quarter, the peace diplomacy has taken a major hit. The battlefield victories, and then they were reversed by the US and special forces. Ghazni was taken, and then Taliban, retreated. This has been the case since December 2014. So if you look at the overall dynamics of the Afghan conflict, it is strategically stalemated. The US is not losing. The Afghan Taliban, irrespective of their tactical victories, in a strategic manner, they are not winning. Now, why the talks were postponed and where are we headed with all this? Number of factors. If you look at it, a lot is going on. So these are the best of the times and the worst of the times. Why best of times? For the first time, we witnessed a truce between Kabul and the Afghan Taliban. It created a lot of euphoria, but then it fizzled out very quickly. The timing of the Russian initiative looks premature to me. I believe it was done in undue haste, because if you look at what is happening within Kabul, as Hassan Khan Sahab pointed out, Ashraf Ghani is an outgoing president. The injection of Zalmay Khalilzad, who had ambitions of running for the presidential office, is very, very suggestive. Bringing in anti-Pakistan, pro-war, anti-Taliban lobby in the power corridors of Kabul is very, very suggestive. The Michael Pompeo is coming and he's stopping over in Islamabad and then going in Delhi.
Yes, we'll talk about that as well.
So, that tells you a lot of what is going on. The government in Pakistan, there is a new government. They said that they want to be partners in peace, not involved with the US. PM Imran's speech, inaugural speech, he also said he wants to have cordial ties with Afghanistan. But beyond that, you really have to give some time to see what kind of, in specifics, what is the policy of the new government. Of course, there will be a continuity in Pakistan's Afghan policy, but with so much happening in the region, a new government in Pakistan, a lot changing within Kabul, one ceasefire working, another ceasefire not working, battlefield victories, and then the reversal of it. So I think the timing of Kabul's, Moscow's peace initiative was premature, and then they really had to take it back. So I think, but what does it mean in the bigger picture? I think it is just a battle lost. It continues. There will be so many ups and downs in the peace process. It's like one step forward, two steps backward kind of a situation. A momentum was built, but then the government in Pakistan changed. A lot has changed in Kabul. So we have to almost restart that now. So let's see, the spring offensive in Afghanistan is coming to a close. There will be winters in about 2 months' time. That might be the time to give diplomacy a new push. But then the biggest factor that we really have to ponder upon is in 6 months' time, in April, I believe, March, April is when presidential elections in Afghanistan are due. Who will come to power next? What kind of elections we'll have in Afghanistan? Will they be controversial? Of course, Ashraf Ghani is going to run for presidential elections. Is Abdullah going to run or not? Is Zalmay Khalilzad running? And eventually, who comes to power and in which manner? A lot of it will decide the future of the peace process as well as the insurgency. In between, I think until April, as Hassan Khan Sahab said, I see a lot of conflict at the Afghan front. Until April, I'm not very hopeful of any kind of a breakthrough or positive developments at the peace front.
Well, that's very unfortunate, but it seems to be indeed the true picture as you're describing it. But we can't also ignore the fact that the US military chief and Mr. Pompeo are both arriving in Islamabad next week. or rather this week is it going to be now?
This week.
5 September.
On the 5th of September. Few things that have come out from the discussions in Washington, sir, are about the relationship between Pakistan and the US, and going forward in determining how to achieve peace in Afghanistan. The Americans have also indicated about India's role in Afghanistan. So in your opinion, sir, what kind of a middle ground will we be able to achieve with the Americans when they arrive? Because right now we can see that the relationship is really in the gutter.
Because I've been hearing these kind of statements for the last about 15 years, that we are moving from one hope point to the other hope point, and the peace does not come around in Afghanistan. So the bigger question is America really serious about bringing peace and stability in Afghanistan?
Yes, that's the million-dollar question.
Right. So if they had not shown all their cards, what is their end state in their mind that they want to see in Afghanistan? What is the end state? They hadn't come here to conquer Afghanistan. They had some bigger strategic objectives here. So that I link it with the point given by Mr. Bassett, that the bigger picture is that Afghanistan is the battleground for the great games since 19th century. Until the date, that great game is continuing with different countries competing in the region. In the 19th century, we saw British Empire contesting Tsarist Russia. Then we saw Russia as a Soviet Union competing against America. They were the partners in Second World War, and soon after World War, they emerged as two bigger competitors. So Afghanistan has remained the battlefield or the war zone for the bigger countries to contest and compete for their strategic interest here. Now, fast forward, what we have seen in the last 17 years, all the regional players, the regional countries, they have come to a conclusion that the peace in Afghanistan has to be following a regional solution, which has to be Afghan-led, Afghan-owned. And that is the reason recently stated by Afghan president in his discussion with the Russian foreign minister, Mr. Sergei Lavrov, and that has come out in their press release, that Ashraf Ghani wants Afghan-led, Afghan-owned, and we are very glad to hear that, because Pakistan has been trying to achieve the same peace process success through quadrilateral group.
But sir, that's the rhetoric that even the Americans have been using. So there's no difference in the rhetoric.
So it's a very interesting point that America says that they want peace in Afghanistan.
Afghan-led and Afghan-owned.
Right. Russia is saying the same. China is saying the same. Pakistan is saying the same. But why the peace is not coming?
But
Why
doing
does
contrary to it. Everyone is doing
everybody
contrary
agrees.
to it. Yeah.
So the point is, what is stated diplomatically is not meant on ground. It is manifested. The covert wars, that is called actually the great game. The covert wars continue. The contest is for strategic influence in Central Asia, in Afghanistan, in the Kasa region, what we call Central Asia, South Asia. So all regional countries in Iran, Pakistan, China, Central Asian republics, everybody is trying to save their skins, take care of their own interest. That is one part. Second part is that contest in Afghanistan is less about winning, but it's more about making sure that the opponents do not win. So that is a great game.
Right.
So every contester, every competitor understands that they can't win, they can't have a clean victory as per their dreams. Everybody realizes that, but at the same time, they make sure that the stalemate does not end in making sure that their opponent comes into the stronger position.
Yes,
so that is what we are seeing, that Russia has been trying, as my friends Bassett and Khan Sahib said, that they have been trying to bring peace in Afghanistan. America doesn't want it to happen. China has made efforts on the QCG format, along with Pakistan, America and Afghanistan. Whenever they were near any solution, for example, take back to that Murray summit.
Absolutely.
When right at the time when we were hoping that peace finally would come to Afghanistan, Mullah Akhtar Mansoor was killed, brought from Iran near Quetta killed on Pakistani territory. If they had to kill him, they could kill him from where he was brought there. So that is how the discrete things happen. So it's not all that black and white that we are looking at.
Absolutely, sir. Let's also take a look at Mr. General Dunford's statement, because Mr. Pompeo and Mr. Dunford are expected in Islamabad soon. Let's also go over what he said in the US recently. He said that the United States will maintain a permanent diplomatic presence in Afghanistan, but the Pentagon does not see an endless large-scale military mission there. Could you please analyze or, explain to us what exactly is that supposed to mean?
This is just I think a statement that for the public consumption, that what the American are interested, but what the American are doing there. Look, because we are talking about this this slogan of Afghan-led, Afghan-owned. Whether I'm not saying that Afghan leadership doesn't have the capacity to lead or to bring peace. But in the current situation where now Kabul is, as we said, is a unity government, the only unity government, unity is non-existent, one. Two, whether the Afghan leadership have uniform view about having peace with the insurgents or not, with the Taliban or not. And then there is the ethnic division, then there is this division on the political grounds, and then division on geographical ground. So unfortunately, I think we say it, even the US say it, even the Chinese and the Russians say it, but the bull in the China shop is the US. What the US want, I think that happened. The reason is, currently the Afghan government, almost $4 billion or plus, it is pumped into their security operators and entirely coming from the US, or the US friends, or US is managing that. So definitely, somebody asked Ashraf Ghani, and it's a very famous statement that without the US or international support, how long your government will last?
He said not even 6 months. Yeah.
So if that is the situation, how can we expect that the Afghan government or the Afghan leadership will take independent decision, not annoying the US or not keeping the US in agreement? So I think the better it is, then this regional approach, yes, no doubt regional approach is the best approach, but how much influential the regional powers are in taking the situation in Afghanistan, like the Russia. No doubt, Russia is a very important country in the region. Chinese are more important than I think the rest of the country in the region. But how long, what is the level of influence Chinese have in Afghanistan, the level of influence the Russian have in Afghanistan, and the level of influence the US have in Afghanistan. So all say one thing, and if the US say another things. US, I think there is, if everybody say the Afghan, Taliban say, we want to have direct communication with the US, and then everybody say no objection. So now do it.
Well, they've already done it once.
Well, and, but I think that the fact is, I may be a bit cynical about it, but I don't see that the US is interested in a peaceful Afghanistan.
Now it
I think
seems
they have to keep the pot boiling. The reason is that when the pot is boiling, so definitely they will have some what we call it reason to be here.
Yes.
Yeah, reason to be here, and telling the people that we are here to bring peace. Now, no doubt, the number is very down. It's 13,000 plus.
so this
at the moment.
slogan that Afghan-led and Afghan.
And then the Russians, the Americans are fingering with the Iran. They are also not having a very positive approach about Pakistan. And then the Chinese and then the Russians, the only good friend they have is in India. And Indian too have very, I think at the moment India has a lot of influence in the Afghan government, of the Afghan establishment. So the two countries which have some leverage within Kabul, they are either India or either the US. And India have been given space by the US. So, and now in this process of peace, who is more interested in bringing peace to Afghanistan? One is Pakistan, definitely, because Pakistan is the immediate, I think it's all the things are happening in our backyard. So definitely we want to have a peaceful Afghanistan one way or the other way. The Chinese, because Chinese have economic interests.
Also their backyard.
So definitely also their backyard. The Russians, this is called
Also
South
their
Billy,
backyard.
there's the backyard. Maybe the Iranian, also their backyard. So I think the countries which are seriously interested in a peaceful Afghanistan Unfortunately, they are lacking.
Sidelined.
Yeah, they are sidelined. They are lacking that level of influence within Kabul regime. So I think the situation is getting murkier day by day.
Very unfortunate, but that's the situation. The question
And
was,
this is bad that we are ending our statement already in a very sad mood.
Basit, like Hassan Saab is saying, that this slogan of an Afghan-led and Afghan-owned peace process is now beginning to sound hollow. In fact, now it seems that this is an excuse that they're using in order to perpetuate war in Afghanistan rather than bring about peace. Would you agree with this assertion?
Once again, somehow I'm stuck with the timing. If you look at your question about U.S. Our military chief's statement, Dunford's statement, ensuring a long-term presence in South Asia diplomatically, but no
Not
endless,
militarily.
no endless military engagement here, is in a way a reassurance to Kabul and its other strategic allies in South Asia that they're not going to abandon the region anytime soon. It is also an indication that if there are going to be elections in Afghanistan 6 months down the road, the security guarantees to the next government will be there. So they had to make this statement. It makes some sense, that much.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Basit, but I want to also further add to the statement that he made. And he said that we have permanent interests in South Asia's diplomatic interests and security interests, and we're going to maintain a presence to have an influence in the region. He also said, which is now the tricky bit, and that is that the form of that presence is going to change over time. And I certainly don't expect that the current forces that we have in Afghanistan represent an enduring large military commitment. Now you may please continue.
Yeah. There has been a discussion. A major shift in the U.S. position has been they are ready to sit down with the Afghan Taliban, at least in words they said that, to initiate the process, to break the logjam, to pave way for the Afghan-owned, Afghan-led peace process. So they were ready to be the first point of contact in that regard. But they never said that this is their meeting with Afghan Taliban was not a replacement of Kabul. Eventually, Taliban would have to talk to Kabul. If that were to happen, then this part is that Afghan Taliban showed some flexibility, that they were ready to enter into a conditional ceasefire, provided that US forces in Afghanistan stopped fighting and moved towards some kind of a training role. And if there was a political agreement, then of course some Taliban foot soldiers would become part of the Afghan forces and they would be undergoing the same training. So I think part of it relates to that. Or it might relate to they would remain idle more in a counter-terrorism mode, not in a counter-insurgency mode, because counter-insurgency is population-centric. So you go area to man with the Afghan forces, you are embedded. Counter-terrorism is you are sitting in your own camp, and when you have a very pointed information about actionable intelligence of some terrorist activity which is directly hurting the American interest in the region, then they can use drones, they can use air power, or they can do pointed, counter-terrorism operations. So I think part of it relates to that, and part of it relates to stop fighting, something which Trump administration changed and allowed the US forces stationed in Afghanistan to fight alongside the Afghan forces. Now, the larger question then is, where is all this headed? What are we to expect in next 8 to 10 months? I think this back and forth pattern will continue. You will see positive statements and developments. You will see negative developments and statements until you have an Afghan election. Also remember, next year there are going to be elections in New Delhi, an important capital for Washington, D.C. So they will wait for that election. Though the outcome of the election in New Delhi is a foregone conclusion, PM Modi is a very strong PM and he is expected to win there. So I think until all of these things do not solidify, what we are witnessing is a very fluid situation. As Hassan Khan Saab said, it is murky, it is highly unexpected developments have been taking place. So tomorrow or in a week's time, you see a positive development, and then you may see a very negative development. One step forward, two steps backward. This will continue until you really have a solidified. By that time, the government in Islamabad would have settled in and they would have found their feet on the ground. Then you have a power shift taking place in Kabul, in Delhi, and then come back to the, so go back to the drawing board and then come back and see what is there for you and what can you do with that. So I think for the next 6-8 months, the fluidity is going to continue, upward trends of violence, peace diplomacy, which created a lot of optimism, cautious optimism, and a euphoria, starting with Eid al-Fitr ceasefire. I think that is receding in the background. But what is so surprising about it? Hasn't the pattern of Afghan conflict been like this since December 2014?
Absolutely. It
Yep.
seems like we're
Yep.
perpetually stuck in a limbo as far as that is concerned. Let's come back to the meeting that is going to take place in Pakistan between Mr. Mike Pompeo and Mr. Dunford. A few things that he has pointed out which are very pertinent to our discussion. First of all, the need to fight terrorists would be the primary part of their discussions with Pakistan, according to the US Defense Secretary, Mr. James Mattis. He further also said that the delegation is going to make very clear what we have to do for all our nations in meeting our common foe, which is the terrorists, and make that a primary part of the discussion that they're going to have with Pakistan. But they also want to maintain their diplomatic and security presence in South Asia, which is another thing that he said. What he said about India, I will come to later, sir. But when we talk about the discussion between the US and Pakistan, it never goes beyond the discussion on terrorism. We want to de-link our relationship with the US and de-link it from Afghanistan. We want a relationship which is directly between the US and Pakistan, not viewed through the Afghan prism, but we are not getting there, sir. What do you think is the reason, sir?
I 100% agree what you just stated, that we have to unhook ourselves from this only bilateral relation hinged on counterterrorism, one word. I think as for counterterrorism, Pakistan has done enough. We have done much more than 50 countries did altogether in Afghanistan. They only created the mess more compounded. They pushed out all the terrorists in tribal areas of Pakistan. Mr. Hassan would shed more light on that. We in the last 17 years at a very heavy cost have been able to win our part of the war on terrorism. But now rehabilitation of militants within the country, Pakistan is doing a very serious job on there. It takes time. Whatever American demands are now from Pakistan, they are not static in nature. They keep changing. Whatever, before any visit, it always happens. They give the introductory statement so that the stage is set for them to come and discuss. But this time, one positive thing is we're going to see that Pakistan leadership is going to be very clearly talking to them, keeping Pakistan National Front at the topmost. We have done enough. Whatever is wanted from Pakistan, we are ready to discuss, but not at the cost of surrendering our national interest. India sitting in our backyard has been happening. They have been launching proxies using Afghanistan soil. That is not acceptable to Pakistan at all. So they are going to hear it from the Prime Minister or the Foreign Minister of Pakistan very, very clearly. So I am thankful to them that ultimately the American cat is out of the bag as for their intentions for staying back in one form or the other in Afghanistan. But why are they going to be sitting permanently in Afghanistan in whatever form they are envisaging? One, this statement makes the things easier for Pakistan policymakers to make their own strategic adjustments. But as for coming to any agreement in Taliban, when they have said that we are going to be here, it makes the peace process that much more difficult. Because Afghanistan Taliban precondition for day one till to date has been that America has to leave in order to bring peace in Afghanistan. So who are the two main belligerents in the arena? It is the Taliban insurgency versus the coalition forces led by America. So when Taliban are seriously saying that we are not going to sit idle and silent, when you are showing your military presence, so peace becomes that much more compounded and distant dream. Second thing is that in Afghanistan, the bigger game that we just talked about, how China, how Russia, how Central Asian republics, and more so how Iran, which is now appearing to be the immediate target of US and Israel, how would they take it? And wouldn't they respond in cooperation with their allies in the region? Especially, we know the cooperation between Russia and Iran. So they will play their own cards. So that will make the situation in Afghanistan, I think, more volatile. The peace becomes that much more distant. India, I think, would be playing very intelligent. They would play cool because, as Basit was saying, situation is becoming murkier. The timing is alarming, especially when the transitions in political setup are taking place. Things become even more complex. But having said that, for Pakistan and Iran, the alarm bell should ring louder, because before the election and even after the election, the journalists asked questions from Mr. Trump that you had announced that you will disengage from all international military engagement. So why aren't you withdrawing now from Afghanistan? He said, well, I want to withdraw, but then I have to listen to the general of the general, that Jim Mattis, and then I have to keep an eye on nuclear Pakistan. So he said very clearly.
Right, sir.
Now Pakistan may be second in sequence, but now discarding JCPO and putting Iran in the dock. So that means Iran will have immediate attention from the Americans when the situation gets worse. So I think the whole region is going to be very upset. So in such a situation, if Mr. Pompeo and Jim Mattis are coming, so Pakistan leaders should be very clearly talking to them and telling them that we do understand what your statement means, what your intents are, but we are ready to cooperate, work with you where we converge. But if the convergence with Russia, you're not agreeing on bringing peace by the regional countries where everybody is sitting. So we are very clear, and rightly said by Hassan and Basit, peace doesn't seem to be their end state. Their end state has to be denuclearize Pakistan, denuclearize Iran. Well, Iran, they can put pressure, but on Pakistan, we don't take nonsense. We are nuclear power. We have strategic deterrence, and at a very, very heavy cost. It is our survival kit, so no compromise there at all.
Well, sir, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because this is where we are right now. Mr. Mattis has said that Secretary Pompeo and he were going to New Delhi after their meeting in Pakistan, and that those talks are aimed at further strengthening growing partnership with India. And I want to quote, "We see the strengthening of India's democracy, its military, its economy as a stabilizing element in the world." He said that we want to make certain that where we have common interests, we are working together. And he also said that a number of agreements are going to be signed between the US and the Indians.
Yes.
So
There
please,
is a-
sir, would you like to
there is a-
comment on
there
this
is a-
situation
there is
and
a-
how
there-
Pakistan is going to
there
feel
is
about
a
that?
famous Pashto songs, and its beginning is Kusaima da para da khandigi charta balze. All the bads are for me, and the good smiles are for somebody else. So looking from these statements, it is all the goods are they are in store for New Delhi, and all the bad things, as Brigadier Saab has also pointed out, are for Pakistan. This is very unfortunate. I think this is the time now Pakistan need to ponder over it. Where is the fault lie? What is the reason? Unfortunately, we don't have institutionalized relationship with the US. During the last 60 years, and if I say it, that our foreign office, I think it will not have that, we call it institutional memory or intelligence memory, etc. For the reason, foreign office and Pakistani foreign office, unfortunately, have least say in relation with the US for the last 60, 70 years. Unfortunately, we have kept it away. It is a transactional type. Always we see American officials coming to Pakistan instead of Islamabad. They prefer to be in Pendi. Even if they are in Islamabad, they try to be meeting with somebody else instead of the people sitting on the hill or sitting in that spacious foreign office. So I think now this is the time for Pakistan to look, I think, to look back. What are the reasons that we are being treated differently from others? yes, I respect my generals, I respect my military officers, I respect my intelligence officers, but I expect them to do their job. I think they are not trained in diplomacy, they are not trained into building country to country relationship. There is a special office for it. In entire civilized world, I think foreign office is handling all the things coming or going out in the foreign countries. In Pakistan now, current, I think from the new government, currently the military leadership is more interested, I think, in shedding these responsibilities, as I am observing, especially vis-a-vis Afghanistan, vis-a-vis India, even the US also. I think this is the time that now the foreign office take charge of the situations, and only then you look. When the American officials come, look, this Dunford or the Pompeo, their more focus is on security. So primarily, the more attraction for them is going to the general headquarters and meeting with the generals. Yes, and they feel, I think, at home while talking to the general, instead of coming to the foreign office or to the Parliament House, meeting with these civis. For the reason is, the civilians will talk about business, they will talk about relations, they will talk about long-term partnership, etc. While meeting with the generals, and I think this is historically everywhere, when there is a security situation, when there is a warlike situation, so definitely the generals have to look into the war, the spots where the fire is burning. So I think now this is the time that we should tell the Americans that, look, sir, welcome to Islamabad. Thank you very much. We honor you a lot, but we want you to build, to talk to an institutions which is supposed to be. So I think only then we can look. Both the gentlemen will go to Delhi, and their meetings, observe their meetings with whom and with who they are meeting there, and what they will be definitely meeting with the economic, with the foreign office, with the economic team, with the statistic, where their populations, where with the environment and health officials there. Only in Pakistan, when they are here, they are talking of giving and taking. We give you the money, you give us the service. So I think now we have to pass this post on.
I'll just add a comment to what my dear friend Hassan is saying. It's just a matter of perception.
So very quickly, because we're out of time.
Right. The perception that Mr. Hassan is giving is, to me, it's not correct. Because whenever American delegations come here, if they are predominantly military, they have to meet the military. But if it is predominantly political side, and the political side, they always operate with Pakistan on inequality. They come second tier or third tier, and they meet the foreign office, the foreign secretary. We didn't have the foreign minister in the last government for 4.5 years. So perforce they were meeting only the advisor, Mr. Sartaj or Mr. Fatimi, and then the foreign office. But they would also meet the prime minister, they would meet the other minister. So they had been meeting all the interlocutors in their counterparts.
But sir,
so that perception,
with all due respect, that was not my question. But anyway, thank you very much for taking out the time and sharing your views with PTV World. We will be continuing this conversation because as Mr. Pompeo and Mr. Dunford will be here, there'll be a lot more to talk about once that result comes out. Thank you once again, sir, for taking out the time. Well, you heard the conversation, and in the end, please draw your own conclusions from what you've heard. And with that note, it's goodbye.
My party took this decision to support PTI in the center and to sit in the opposition in Punjab, in Sindh,
Right.
only for the sake of getting some support from at least the federal government.
Yeah, but
in
it
respect
doesn't
of Karachi.
support your cause in Karachi, does it? Because then you cannot rewrite the provincial or local bodies' laws in the province, and then you cannot empower the Karachi.
The federal government has some say in some of the projects. There are certain projects that are sponsored, funded by the federal government. Initiatives are taken by them, number one. Number two, there are like, for example, K4 project. It's a mega water supply project for Karachi. That is like kind of has been stalled by the previous government despite our repeated requests and despite their repeated promises that they will do it, but they never did it. So there are certain issues in which we can, as I said, we see a window of opportunity for the federal government to do something for public in Karachi. So that was one of the reasons. The other issue is that Karachi, the federal government receives almost 60 more than 60% of revenue
Okay.
from Karachi.
All right.
But very
Nothing,
small amount
hardly
is spent.
anything is paid
yeah,
back.
Yeah, so at
that
least-
is a good argument, but I'm told that I have to conclude the program. If you want to add something, please do.
I just want that, I wish that we all bring the president with consensus.
Amen.
We,
Amen.
yes. And instead of going through all these things, like if the opposition is not going to bring a joint candidate,
Right.
so there is no need for all these things. I think that
Yeah,
there
they have
should-
already won.
Yes, so I just wish this.
Yeah, but
that-
you have helped me, and today's session was quite illuminating. It helped me understand how everything in this presidential election is about identities, and how every party is trying to, safeguard their identity by compromising with one party or the other. That is very important thing, and I hope someday we are going to have a more detailed discussion on that. Senator Sitara Ayaz Sahiba, thank you very much for your time. Barrister Muhammad Ali Saif, always great pleasure having you in the show as well.
Thank you.
Viewers, you have listened to our participants. This discussion has to continue, because in Pakistan it seems that many political parties, with the exception of one party, and that is very important party, it is ruling the country now. It is PTI. With the exception of that party, it seems all other parties are worried about their identity. And at times they have to cut deals, at times they have to actually be part of activities that they might not have supported otherwise. For example, ANP might not have supported Maulana Fazlur Rahman, but they have to, perhaps for the optics' sake. But at this moment, it is important to remember that we can create a society where you have only one ideology, one party, one philosophy. But usually that doesn't help in the evolution of society itself or the polity itself. This was today's program. Thank you very much for watching us. Take care.